This is a quick breakdown of how Bible logic does not make sense, how God logic of the Bible does not make any sense whatsoever. And if you are willing to accept that the Bible logic does make sense, then it just demonstrates that you either have cognitive dissonance or confirmation bias. So here's the facts. Now, according to the Bible logic, the Noah's flood happened in or around 2400 BCE. Now, after the flood, Noah had 3 sons. Those 3 sons had a plethora of children. Those children made up all the other nations that came about in the world. Now, from 2400 BCE to 2200 BCE, you have the time frame where those children were living and they were growing and establishing their nations, right? Now, around 2200 BCE, for about 200 years, 100 to 200 years later, you have the Tower of Babel occurring. So in around 2300 to 2200 is the story of the Tower of Babel. Now, this story is indicating that all of the people of the world spoke the same language and they built the tower in Babylon. And because God saw this tower and thought that the man was being prideful and said that if they can do this all together, then they will become there's nothing they can't accomplish. So he confused the language, and then they all spread out and went and did their own thing, speaking different languages. And after they spoke their own languages, about 100 years later, around 2100, somewhere between 2100 and 1900 BCE, you have Abraham. And this is where this God selected Abraham out of the city of Ur and established his people through Abraham, who is a descendant of Shem. So Abraham now becomes God's favorite person, and he begins his tribe with Abraham. That all makes logical Bible sense. But historically, this is what we do know. Historically, we know that in and around 2400 BCE, that the entire area to which the Noah's flood was supposed to have happened, and where they settled, was in Sumeria, and that the Sumerians were top dog nation at that time. You had a few smaller nations. The Proto-Akkadian and the Proto-Babylonian Empire was being started, which was known as the Amorite Empire. Now, the city of Babylon, in or around 2200, was a small city-state inside of the Sumerian Empire. The Akkadians were coming up, but the Amorites were in Babylon by their first known king. His name was Suma something. And this king is the one that would have been in charge of Babylon at the time frame of the Tower of Babel. Now, with them being a small city-state under Sumeria at 2200, this is when the Tower of Babel would have been built. And so those people were already speaking a Proto-Babylonian and Amorite dialect. So they were already speaking a different language at that time frame than the people in Sumeria and the people and the Akkadians. And we have to remember, Sumerian language is not a Semitic language, so it has absolutely nothing to do with the Hebrew people. Now, by the time we get to the 21 to 1900 era of Abraham, Abraham is coming out of Ur, which Ur at that time was a Sumerian city, meaning he would have spoken Sumerian. He was Sumerian, meaning his parents, his family, as demonstrated in the stories, would have worshipped the Sumerian gods of Anu, Enki, Enlil, and Harsag, and so on and so forth, which does demonstrate itself when when Isaac's son Jacob goes to find his wife Rachel. Rachel then takes the gods of her father and hides them under her pum, claiming that she was on her cycle, and that's why he didn't check. So therefore, that he went and got the bloodline, but the religion was different. So that means that Abraham was originally a Sumerian who was worshiping one particular Sumerian god, Enlil, and Enlil decided to change his name to Yahweh and become the God of Abraham. And this is the big change that happens historically in this story if you fit it together in its proper format. So the logic of this God is thus: I'm going to create a being with Adam. I'm going to give him Eve. They're going to have children. Their children will proliferate until I am sick of them. Then I will flood and kill them all, and I will start over with Noah and his 3 sons and their 3 wives. I will then allow them to group together and build a city. But when they build this city, they are getting too big for their britches. So I'm going to change their languages. Now I know as this God, because I'm all-knowing and omnipresent, then these people are going to spread out because of this different language, and they're going to have the Sumerian Empire, the Amorites. They're going to have the Akkadian Empire. They're going to spread out. They were already down there creating the Egyptian Old Kingdom Empire. So I know they're going to spread out and create these empires and a bunch of different gods. But I'm going to wait. And after they build this tower, I'm going to separate them all, and they're going to go out and start these empires. And then I'm going to pick this one guy who still worship me because my real name is Enlil. And I'm going to then take him and separate this one person and start my people with this one person, although I originally destroyed everybody because everybody was so wicked and I wanted them to continue to just worship me. And even though I know that every thought from man is evil according to what was said in Genesis before the flood and after the flood, then I'm going to pick this one person who is worshiping me, Enlil / Yahweh, and I'm going to make them my people. Now, all those other people were still people that I loved and created because I allowed them to survive through Japheth and Ham, but I'm going to have animosity towards them. As a matter of fact, that Amorites, I want you to destroy those Amorites. Them Canaanites, I want you to destroy them Canaanites. Them Pebusites and Jebusites and Hittites, I want you to destroy all those people. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make proclamations that you're going to be the ruler of those people. Yet you never become the ruler of any of those people. But that's what my plan is, and that's how I'm going to make this work, so that everybody in the world will start to worship me. Now, while all this is going on in this small little area of land, there are people in ancient China who started their Chinese dynasties. There are people in the Americas who started their dynasties. People in Southern Africa started theirs. There are people in Europe who started their kingdoms and dynasties. I'm not going to worry about them because guess what? I'm going to wait till about 3 millennia later, and then I'm going to make sure that they then hear about me dying me being born to a virgin so that I can die on a cross, and then as a sacrifice to myself for the sin that I brought into this world in the first place. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? It doesn't match up to the historical record. We know that the Sumerians were already around before, during, and after the flood. We know that the Amorites, the Babylonians, who would become the Babylonians. We know that the Akkadians, the Chinese, the Kemetics, that the Europeans, the people in the Americas were already in existence before, during, and after the flood. But I'm going to make this claim that I separated this one person and they worship me. Why? It makes no sense whatsoever. And if you are willing to accept that that narrative is the true world history, and that this is the ideas of a good God, this is the ideas of an intelligent God, then you are just merely fooling yourself and allowing yourself to be fooled because your parents taught you to be a fool. So y'all have a great day. And remember always, you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.